Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today. Look, if you're a beginner barista, whether you're staring down a shiny new home espresso machine or you're jumping behind the counter at a really busy local cafe, you already know that pulling a great shot is only half the battle, right? The other half, well, that's what we're tackling today. We're taking a highly focused, super visual journey to completely demystify the perfect pour. Our main goal here is to equip you with the exact step-by-step techniques you need to master a simple, elegant, basic heart design. And, just as importantly, we're going to show you exactly which common pitfalls you need to avoid.
So, let's start with a little honest reflection. Why does your latte art currently look like, well, a shapeless white blob? Or maybe it just kind of looks like a fuzzy, slightly aggressive cloud. First of all, I really want to validate your frustration here. Pouring latte art is incredibly tough. It looks so effortless when you watch a pro do it on social media, but in reality, it's this massive juggling act of timing, volume, and absolute precision. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of learning to play the guitar. You can't just pick it up and instantly shred a solo, you know? All those hand positions and tiny movements are just so much easier to master when you train them separately and in very, very slow motion. Because the slower you train, the stronger you build that absolutely crucial muscle memory. Setting the expectation that you're starting with a solid foundation is just key. I mean, mastering a simple, symmetrical monk's head or a single heart, that is a massive victory, and it builds the exact technique that makes those crazy complicated swan designs possible down the road.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the latte art struggle, perfecting your milk texture, the two-phase pour technique, avoiding common pouring mistakes, and finally, some awesome waste-free practice hacks.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the latte art struggle. And moving right along to Section 2, perfecting your milk texture. So before you can even think about painting a design, you have to prepare your medium. You literally cannot pour great latte art without perfectly steamed milk. It is the absolute foundation of the whole shebang. Now for beginners, full cream milk is highly, highly recommended because it gives you the most forgiving and beautiful texture to learn with. Now pay attention to this part. You need to listen to your steam wand. If you hear a loud, aggressive screeching sound, yeah, that means your milk is desperately crying out for more air. But on the flip side, if you inject way too much air, you're going to get this thick, coarse foam that just refuses to flow. What you actually want is a subtle, intermittent ripping sound right at the start, followed by a gentle whirlpool in the pitcher to mix all together. You are aiming for a texture that looks exactly like melted ice cream or wet latex paint, complete with this beautiful glossy shine on the surface. If you just let it sit there too long without swirling, you'll end up with separated distinct layers where the dense milk sinks and the airy foam just floats on top. And trust me, that will totally ruin your pour.
I absolutely love this visual metaphor from coffee expert Lance Hendrick, and honestly, this is a total light bulb moment. He says we need to think of the espresso base as a canvas. You see, espresso naturally behaves kind of like a liquid oil. So if you just dump your milk straight on top, the pattern won't hold its shape at all. It'll just bleed out and completely lack any crisp contrast. So before you pour, give your espresso crema a nice, gentle swirl in the cup. This mixes the darker and lighter parts of the crema together, setting up this wonderfully uniform, stable, oil-like surface. That way, your bright white milk paint can actually grip the canvas and hold a really beautiful, symmetrical shape.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the two-phase pour technique.
The actual physical action of pouring is broken down into two very logical, distinct phases. First, mixing the milk with the espresso to finish setting that canvas, and then dropping down nice and close to actually pour the design. If you can separate these two phases in your mind, I promise you will immediately have so much more control. But before a single drop of milk even falls, you've got to set your cup angle. You want to hold your cup by the handle pointing straight at your chest, so the design will face the customer right side up when you set it down. Then tilt the cup towards your pitcher by exactly 30 to 40 degrees. This specific angle is absolutely critical. By tilting it until the espresso is just about touching the very edge, you create a nice, deep pool of liquid right in the center. This depth is super necessary for the first phase of the pour, because it allows the milk to literally dive under the crema rather than washing it out.
Okay, once you're tilted, we execute the three physical stages of the two-phase pour. Let's walk through the rhythm of this, because the pacing is everything. Step 1 is the base. You pour from up high, and you pour slowly, just moving the stream all around the cup to mix it in. Then, once the cup is about half full, you transition into Step 2, the design. You drop that pitcher incredibly low, almost touching the surface of the coffee, and you pour fast. You want to add a gentle wiggling motion from your wrist, left to right, making sure you stay perfectly centered on the vertical axis as you slowly level the cup back to horizontal. Finally, step 3 is the finish. You stop the wiggle, lift the pitcher back up high, and pour slowly, dragging a fine line straight through the center. So remember, high and slow, low and fast, high and slow.
Let's really focus on that final strike through for a second, because the crucial point here is exactly how you finish. You've done all this hard work, you've drawn a beautiful, symmetrical pattern, and beginners so often panic and rush the finish. Do not do this. As the cup fills, just stop. Raise that pitcher up at least 10 to 15 centimeters off the surface. You want to cut through the design with a stream of milk that is literally toothpick thin. If you pull through while the spout is too low and that stream is too thick, you will quite literally drag the entire design down into the cup with you, completely destroying the pattern you just built. Height is what creates that sharp, thin, slicing stream.
All right, let's look at section 4, avoiding common pouring mistakes. Now, if you're practicing at home right now, it is incredibly helpful to reverse engineer exactly why a pour is failing so you can just correct it on the very next cup. So let's rapidly run through some common pitfalls. First up, waiting too long to pour. Look, coffee can smell your fear. You need to get in there as soon as possible or that perfectly steamed milk is going to separate on you. Second, pouring too fast during the design phase. This washes away the crema and leaves you with, you guessed it, a giant white blob. But third, pouring too slowly means the crema just rises right to the top, which gives you a tiny, unimpressive design, or honestly, nothing at all. Fourth, avoid wacky, strained arm angles. If you line up your cup nice and straight with your jug and draw a straight line from top to bottom, you're pretty much guaranteeing a highly symmetrical design. And finally, mismatching your cup and pitcher volumes.
Let's actually expand on that last point for a second because it is super sneaky. Cold milk expands by roughly 30% during the steaming process as you inject all that air, and that 30% brilliantly illustrates exactly why you must match your pitcher volume to your cup size. Think about it. The goal is to finish your design just as the pitcher empties. So if you use a massive 20-ounce pitcher filled to the brim to pour a tiny 8-ounce drink, you will physically not be able to tilt the pitcher enough to get the spout close to the espresso during the design phase. I mean, not unless you want to spill hot milk everywhere. That extra distance completely ruins the pour. So plan your volumes carefully so you can tilt aggressively and get that spout right down onto the canvas.
And finally, Section 5, Waste-Free Practice Hacks.
So practicing latte art requires a lot of repetition. And burning through gallons and gallons of real milk, yeah, that gets incredibly expensive. So let's swap out the real ingredients for some practice components so you can train those muscle movements without throwing your hard-earned money straight down the drain. Check this out. Instead of steaming expensive full cream milk, just fill your pitcher with cold water and add a single drop of liquid dish soap. You steam it exactly like you would real milk, and it mimics the microfoam texture wonderfully. And for your canvas? Well, instead of pulling a fresh espresso shot every time, just use a little diluted cacao powder in the bottom of your cup. Or you can use 2 ounces of hot water with a drop of dark food coloring. This gives you that perfect visual contrast you need to check your symmetry. Oh, and here is a massive bonus tip if you are using real milk. After you finish pouring a practice cup, literally just pour the whole thing back into the jug. Swirl it to recombine, pour a tiny bit back into your cup, sprinkle some chocolate powder on top for contrast, and pour again. You can actually recycle the exact same milk 5 to 6 times before the texture totally degrades. Just please remember to purge your steam wand afterwards, and obviously do not drink the dish soap lattes.
So there you have it. You now have the exact roadmap to stop pouring those shapeless white blobs and start pouring purposeful, beautiful art. Just remember, take it slow, really watch your cup angles, and respect the 2 phases of the pour. So I'll leave you with this. Which basic design, the elegant Vart or the classic monk's head, will you conquer first using your brand new dish soap practice lattes? Grab your pitcher, trust the process, and I'll see you next time on The Explainer.